Don Gillis, author of The Battle for Boston. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Natalie.
Awesome. So could you start by telling us what is the book about and what inspired you to write it?
What inspired me to write the book is I've been active in Boston neighborhoods for decades. First in the Fenway, I was a tenant organizer. I got involved in trying to help tenants dealing with rent increases, evictions. There was a lot of arson going on in the community at the time in the 70s. One of the things that really struck me was there was a fire on 50 Peterborough Street in the Fenway in 1971 where 8 people died, and it really motivated me to get involved in sort of working with tenants and trying to improve the conditions and bring people together in the neighborhood. I also work with young people in the Fenway on the streets of the neighborhood. And yes, throughout my career, I work with young people, with tenants in public housing in South Boston at the West Broadway development. I worked in neighborhood services. I had an opportunity to go to Boston City Hall. Mayor Flynn asked me to join his administration. So I've been involved in the city of Boston and the neighborhoods for decades now. And I actually took a little side journey and went back to school at Boston University, where I was working on a PhD in sociology. And as part of that PhD, a research project I come up with, and I decided I was going to take a look back on the period of time, principally from about 1980 to 2000, what had gone on in Boston. And did mayors have any impact? Did city policies have an impact on people's lives in reducing poverty, reducing racial conflict, increasing opportunities for people, young people and others in the city? So that's what I decided to look at. And that really sort of kicked off the book. That was the fundamental beginning of it, where I interviewed more than 70 people. I went back and looked at the archives of the city of Boston. I looked at, the newspapers, I looked at BNN, past shows, and looked at the historical record. And what I found in doing that is there was a real story to be told about Boston, about that period of time. There was 4 mayors, I talked to 4 mayors. I talked to Mayor Ray Flynn, I talked to Mayor Tom Menino, I talked to Mayor Marty Walsh, and I talked to our current mayor, Michelle Wu. And, I got their perspectives, but I also talked to people in the neighborhoods, people who worked in the government, people who were in business, people in the various communities. And I think I got a holistic perspective of what was going on in the city and some of the changes that had occurred and some of the impacts that had occurred during that period of time, led by those various mayors. Particularly, I focus on the mayoralty of Mayor Ray Flynn, who I worked for 10 years.
Right, and Mayor Flynn had such a ginormous impact that we still see today. Can you tell me a little bit more about that impact and what are some of the ways that his influence still rings true today?
Well, I think one of the things when he was elected as mayor in 1983, the city was going through a fundamental transformation. The neighborhoods felt cut out of decision-making in City Hall. Development was focusing on the downtowns. The neighborhoods were being neglected. Police and fire stations were closing. The schools were on the brink of closure. The city was essentially bankrupt, a $40 million deficit. And these are things that he inherited. It was a campaign, he and Mel King ran a very spirited campaign, but they were both based on progressive values. They're trying to bring people together, try to increase affordable housing, try to deal with the racial conflict going on in the city, and try to unite Boston. So one of the things he did is he opened up City Hall to the neighborhoods. The neighborhoods really had a seat at the table now in city government. That was number one. Number two, he took head on the issues of racial conflict going on in the city that had been festering for years.
Right.
If you look back in 1978, they created the Community Disorders Unit in Boston and the Boston Police Department. There were 607 incidences of racial violence, hate crimes that occurred at that time. A few years later, in Mayor Flynn's administration, it was 152. He took the issue head on, working with the police, with the community, with the courts, and the young people in the city, that he really took that on and basically ended racial violence in many respects. While racism in Boston and the country, of course, is not gone, there was a major impact of bringing the city together. I think that's one of the hallmarks of his administration, of uniting Boston. That's really what was key, and I think that's what we're all the most proud of, and he's particularly proud of that.
Right, I'm sure he's proud of it, and we still see that reflecting. People still talk about his influence in the city today, whether you're in, Dorchester, whether you're in the South End or downtown. People still remember his impact. And, what are some examples of the way that you and Mayor Flynn worked together that you talk about in your book?
Right, I think as you mentioned, he was, whether it be Dorchester, East Boston, Charlestown, Jamaica Plain, Roxbury, that he was omnipresent. He was in every neighborhood all the time, every day. talking to people. And in fact, there was one report that at a time that almost 50% of Boston residents had personally met the mayor, which is unheard of. So he was out there and he was connecting with people, listening to what was on their mind. There are a lot of different projects I could talk about. Some of the ones that really strike a chord is in the Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative area in Roxbury. There had been an area that had been undergoing arson, disinvestment. People were coming in from the suburbs on weekends and dumping their trash in this community, whether it be refrigerators or stoves, or, you could get down there and it would be unbelievable. You see these cars coming in from the suburbs dumping their refuse in this community. The community was overrun by drug dealers, and the community began to organize and came together through the Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative. It was a really impressive group of people from the community who decided enough is enough. We worked with them, the Public Works Department, the mayor, all the departments worked with Dudley Street to try to clean up the area physically, try to get rid of the area of drugs, and then to begin to rebuild it. And one of the things that happened is that the Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative petitioned the city of Boston for eminent domain power, something that before that, was only used to tear down neighborhoods like the West End, and the New York Streets area and the South End. It was used to move people out. This was an effort to bring together people in the community and put land together so you can build affordable housing, have community gardens, have open space. And it's been one of the most successful projects in the country. It's the only time that eminent domain power has ever been given to a community group, and they used it well. And the reason that happened is because the mayor and the administration had faith in the community. The community could get the job done. The city wasn't going to come in and say, this is what needs to be done. The community made a determination of, in fact, what needed to be done. They partnered with the city, and it really reflects it today. If you drive in that area, it's dramatic. It's unbelievable, the impact that it's had.
I would love for you to just give us a little glimpse of what to expect.
Well, the book is a culmination of my decades of experience and research and talking to people. It's the data of the book. It is a sociological study, so it's got some academic elements to it. It's a qualitative study, listening to people's voices. The data in the book is from people. It's from the people who spoke to me. It isn't made up. It's what people had to say. And so I used their voices to try to tell a story of what was going on in Boston, how Boston moved forward during that period of time. People can expect to look at, okay, what were the key issues that were going on? Affordable housing crisis in the city, how was that addressed? It was addressed by putting in place linkage. It was first proposed by City Councilor Bruce Bowling back in 1983, and when Mayor Flynn took office, he expanded it and included a job training component where young people, where people of color, Boston residents and women would have opportunities in the construction industry and in permanent jobs. So that was an important issue that was confronted. Dealing with development, so the communities had a seat at the table. We had a lot of luxury high-rise developments going on downtown. This is an attempt to sort of refocus the resources and the efforts on the neighbors of the city. 22 neighbors of the city, they were neglected. And Ray Flynn turned that around. He said in his inaugural, the main people are going to be involved in my administration. It's going to be, trickle up, not trickle down.
Yeah.
So we're going to be engaging people. People were always out there fighting City Hall. This was a chance where people became City Hall. You had activists and neighbor leaders and community organizations who joined the administration, many of which joined the administration in significant positions, and their voice was in all the decisions that the mayor made. So if you read the book, and I hope you do, that in fact you'll see what happened in Boston during this period, what happened around racial conflict, race relations, how they were managed around several contentious periods in the city's history. You'll see what the response was to homelessness and poverty, how we tried to respond to homelessness and reduce poverty in the city, which did occur by increasing job opportunities, by increasing affordable housing, by increasing wages for people in the neighborhoods of the city, giving people a shot. And then dealing with young people. I think the biggest thing that I think Ray Flynn's probably most proud of is really responding to the needs of young people, whether it be there was some conflict in a neighborhood, he would get together. He went down to Wainwright Park in Dorchester, would bring the Boston Celtics, who were going to win the World Championship. The Boston Celtics, he'd bring them down to play with the kids in the park, and they would compete against one another. So he brought kids, whether it be black, white, Latino, Asian. He brought them together. So he tried to bring the city together, and through sports was a big way to do that. He always said sports is the answer, and he was out there himself playing basketball with young people across the city. He was a pro All-American, from Providence College, and so he had some experience in that area and he knew what sports could do to unite the city.
Right. Yeah, and we're the city of champions, right?
We are the city of champions.
There's no better way to unite people, right?
No, and I think if you look at the city of Boston, the city of Boston is a very progressive city, you know, and the foundation was laid, I think, in the early days of the Ray Flynn administration, been carried on by other mayors, and today we have Mayor Wu, who's picked up the torch and is going full steam ahead, you know, in terms of a lot of her policies around protecting immigrants,
Right.
protecting people, building affordable housing, and she's done a terrific job, I think,
Yeah,
in the city of Boston.
Absolutely. So could you tell us where viewers can find out more about your book?
Well, you can find out more about the book on the website, and I urge you to go there. It tells the story of the book. It links you to a number of book talks that are being conducted in Boston Public Libraries over June. There's a series of talks that will be engaging people in the conversation. What I hope this book does, just doesn't sit on someone's shelf or you read it and say, oh, that was nice, but rather engages people in the conversation about Boston's future. So you have to understand the past to sort of know where you're going for the future. And so hopefully the book will spur those conversations, and I hope that happens through a series of book talks from Mattapan and Roxbury to Jamaica Plain and Codman Square. We have book talks everywhere, Rosendale. And so look on the website, you'll see the dates, times, locations of those talks, and we encourage you to come out and be part of the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Don, for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Natalie.